Welcome to today's webinar, What's Next? Planning a Career Pivot or Return to the Workforce, sponsored by the Emory Alumni Association and Alumni Career Services. Thank you so much to those of you who took time out of your workday or other plans today to join us via webinar. My name is Sarah Rawls. I'm Director of Alumni Career Services at the Emory Alumni Association. As you can see, I'm in the Alumni House right now in Atlanta, and with me today is Jennifer Gefsky and Lynn Weitzman. They're joining us from New York and the Apres offices there. And I'm very excited to host these women today as they are going to share the story of Apres, which is a digital platform that connects women returning to the workforce with companies seeking talent and diversity. Fast Company actually called it LinkedIn for women who have taken a career break, which I think is a great way to put it. And New York Magazine called it the career site to combat the motherhood penalty. It launched in May 2016 and now has over 30,000 members and over 100 corporate partners. And I've been speaking with Apres for a while now and very excited to finally having them share information with Emory alumni, as I personally know that it's a struggle for a lot of any parents, women, men, anyone who's taken a career break for a personal reason to make the return back. So I definitely think that organizations like Apres are needed, and they are a great way to supplement some of the services we have here at the Alumni Association, which I can tell you about later. But a bit more about Jennifer and Lynn before I turn it over to them. Jennifer Gefsky is a labor and employment attorney who started her career as an associate at Proskauer Rose in New York and was placed in the firm's prestigious sports practice. Jennifer then went to Major League Baseball and ultimately served as vice president and deputy general counsel and was the highest ranking woman on the baseball side of MLB. And by the way, both of these women have very interesting return to work stories as well that you'll be hearing about later. And Lynn Weitzman is an organizational development executive with over 20 years of experience in talent development and organizational management. Her experience spans government, finance, and human service organizations, including the New York Presbyterian Hospital, UBS, and the New York City Office of the Mayor. Throughout the twists and turns of her career, she has relied on a close network of colleagues and mentors to help navigate the challenges and choices so many women face as they are raising a family and cultivating a career. So as you can see today, we are sharing our webcam, so this hopefully feels a little bit more like an intimate discussion. We wish we could be with you in person, but hopefully gathering Emory alums around the country today. So we don't have any slides to share, but we will be sending out information on Apres and Alumni Career Services after this. Today's conversation will be recorded, and you can access the replay within 2 business days on the Emory University YouTube channel. We have over 70 webinars actually archived on a career webinars playlist there. So I'll send out that information. Also, you can go to the chat area of your GoToWebinar control panel to receive links to the Apres site. And I appreciate those of you who sent in questions in advance. We will be getting to those at the end after we have a little discussion here. But I also encourage you to take a moment and enter in any questions you have for us in the question area of your GoToWebinar control panel. So think of those as they arise so that we can maximize our hour here today. All right, so first question for you ladies. As I just mentioned, you launched Apres last May, but could you explain the platform's benefits in more detail and what problem you're ultimately trying to solve here?
Absolutely. Hi everyone, I'm Jen Gefsky, and thank you Sarah for inviting us to this webinar today. We're very excited to share our stories and also to tell you more about Apres and what we offer our current 30,000 members, mostly women returning to the workforce. So Apres, like I said, is a digital platform. You can find it at apresgroup.com. That's A-P-R-E-S group.com. And the idea when we launched just over a year ago was very simple, which was we wanted to help women return to the workforce. It's after taking career breaks. And so today in the United States, there's literally millions of women who have higher education, either a college or graduate degree, who for one reason or another took a career break, and that can be to care for children, but we've also heard many stories of people who have cared for elderly parents, a sick relative, etc. So, you know, millions of women, and what we have learned, certainly it's our own story, but what we've learned through speaking to many of our members is that it's incredibly difficult to return to the workforce after taking a career break. So our platform is member-focused in the sense that almost all of the content on the site is geared towards women returning to the workforce, regardless if you're just opting out and about to start your career break, in your career break, and thinking about coming back to work, or really ready to come back to work and really ready to start that journey. So we have original content on our site that's informational and educational, and actually quite important, inspirational. You know, so many of these women who are looking to return to the workforce are nervous. They feel maybe out of touch and out of date with what's happening in the current workforce. And so those inspirational stories are really important, I think, to share with one another, to let women know that they're not alone. So we have that content. We also have an educational component of the site where we have partnered with different online educational resources such as edX and Udemy, and we offer courses that we think are relevant to this demographic. We also, and I'll turn to Lynn in a moment, but Lynn is our head career coach, and we have a roster of really amazing career coaches on our site. And I think what you'll find when you're searching for a career coach, that if you just Google career coaches, you can get millions of responses, and that can be overwhelming and daunting. And we wanted to make it easy for our members, so we have vetted the career coaches that are on our site. We personally know them and have vetted them and highly recommend them. And then finally, probably the most important component of our site is what we call our curated job market. So Apres partners with companies from small-sized companies to multinational global companies, and work with them on selecting positions that will be successful for women returning to the workforce. So we have partners such as Facebook and JP Morgan, but we also have small companies on our site as well. So for me, it's very important to champion those companies that believe in women returning to the workforce, that believe in gender diversity, and help them make strides to accomplish their own initiatives. So that really is a very sort of brief overview of the site and what it offers. And like I think you mentioned, we launched May 4th of 2016, so we are just past our 1-year anniversary. And you know, we're really excited. We're growing every day and talking to more and more companies every day.
Great. And I know we're going to get back to the employer piece later on in the conversation, but could you speak more about the courses that you're offering? What are the what sorts of courses seem to be the most important ones for returners to focus on as they brush up on skills?
So that's a great question, and I want to make this point because I think it's really important. What we've learned from women who have returned to the workforce is that I think there's a lot of emphasis on, oh, are my skills rusty, and I have no idea what's going on, and I'm going to go back and not know what to do. And the fact of the matter is, from what we understand from the companies that we work with, the women who return to the workforce, almost regardless of length of career break, ramp up very quickly. For women, they are their own worst enemy in terms of their confidence and knowing their own ability. So the courses that we offer, I would put in 2 different categories. One is sort of industry-based, and that's more our edX courses. So digital marketing, the finance sector, some legal classes, depending on what area you're looking to get back into. The Udemy courses are much more nuts and bolts. You know, how does Excel look today? Or how do you do PowerPoint? Those types of courses. How to build a personal brand. You know, these different courses that really are, I would say, like the toolbox to help women gain that confidence and start with a company fresh and feel like they're up to speed, certainly on the very logistics of how do I send an email, you know?
All right, okay, that's very helpful. And Lynn, I want to talk to you as the head career coach, and you also have your own coaching firm outside of Apres. Are you seeing an increase in the amount of women returning to the workforce, or is this just a problem that hasn't been addressed before?
You know, it's interesting because it kind of links to sort of my story, which is that I was working in nonprofit basically for most of my career, and I noticed as my personal life evolved, I have 3 kids, I started to notice just how many of my friends who were just, you know, professional and had really stellar careers took a time off, like Jen was saying, and they were unable to come back in or just weren't sure what that next step looked like. And so I started to do my own research and dig into not just anecdotal looking, but really what were the numbers. And as Jen said, there are millions of women out there. I think over 40% of women take some time off, as Jen said, whether it to be to take care of children or elderly family members, and over 90% of them want to come back in. So I think there is definitely a heightened awareness of this population, and it's something I think that sites like Apres and coaches like myself are very attuned to these women, and so it's definitely a population that's out there that just in the past has not really had any support, and why we really I think have a lot of reward from working with them, and why they oftentimes really are so grateful for the support we can offer to them.
And I do know in speaking to many alums who are in this situation, it just doesn't seem like there's anywhere to turn. They can't just applying to a job coldly on a large job platform isn't going to be the way. So would you walk us through, Lynn, the typical roadmap that you share? Obviously it's customized per the individual, but a typical roadmap for a returner.
Yeah, sure. So it's definitely an exploration, and it's not a linear roadmap, right? And everyone sort of goes through their own iterations of it, but I'll sort of lay out sort of the general pieces of it. The first part is really to think about what's my professional values, and really that's what are the outcomes that I'm looking to get out of my work. Is it betterment of the world? Is it financial compensation? Is it work-life balance, right? So what are those values? The next is, what are my passions? Which I say all the time, it's such an overly used word, passion, but it's really those activities in which you're doing it and you get lost in it, that feeling of flow. And it could be something recreational, or it could be something professionally that you feel, I'm challenged by it, but I'm also energized by it at the same time. So to really think of those two, passions and values. And then to think of almost a laundry list of all of your competencies, right? So think about volunteer work and professional work. What have I done? What have I excelled at? And once you have sort of these two lists, compiled, it's time to really edit your skills and what you want to be doing. Because oftentimes, I know I've been in a situation where I might be good at something, I don't enjoy it, right? It doesn't fulfill my passion. It doesn't fulfill the values that what I'm looking to get out of work. And that's often when we get stuck somewhere. So I always tell people to look through that lens of, okay, here's your long list of skills. Now you have to check it off. Does this fulfill your values? Does it fulfill your passion? And so you have sort of this edited list that hopefully will start to create for you what kind of roles you want to be doing. At that point, it's time to really think about, what's my gap, right? So if I want to go into marketing, do I have all the necessary skills, like Jen was talking, in terms of educational, in terms of just the technical skills necessary? And if I don't, I have to start thinking about how do I acquire those. And it could be through courses like edX. It could be through more formal courses, right? Maybe you have to go back and get a master's degree. And it also can be through volunteering. To really start thinking about, in a very deliberate way, what are those volunteer opportunities that I'm going to access that are going to help me professionally? We all obviously want to volunteer because it makes us feel good, it helps our communities, but it's time to start thinking about yourself a little bit, and so you can kind of combine the two, which is to think about where do I want to volunteer, where it's going to either help me attain a new skill or hone a skill that I already have, but maybe perhaps a little rusty. And also networking, right? Who are people that perhaps might be able to help me as I'm sort of transitioning back to professional? And so once you've sort of, really kind of, you understand where you want to go, you understand where you're sort of missing, now it's time to really get out there and start networking, right? And that, I think, is the engine-to-end job search, right? I think today, and you had mentioned it, Sarah, that you don't want to go on one of these enormous job boards. So just sort of start sending out resumes because it's going to be defeating, right? The great thing I think about Apres is that it's true, right? You sort of know these are companies that are looking for you. You want to get out from behind your computer and you want to start talking to people. You want to start saying to people when what's new in your life, I'm looking for a job. And you never know, that person who's sitting on the soccer field next to you as you're watching your kid's game might say, hey, I know someone actually that works in that field, or I can actually introduce you to that person. As I said before, volunteering is a great way to find, that network and to really start not just building it, but diversifying it. There is research that says that it's those loose connections that are the most effective way to find your job. So it's that person perhaps that you know from college or in your job 20 years ago that's going to be able to really have an impact on your job search rather than your best friend who perhaps you have coffee with, right? So that's really an important piece. And then it's obviously time to start really drafting your email, your resumes and doing those cover letters and really setting yourself in really a disciplined manner. I think one of the easiest ways that we kind of get off track is we don't hold ourselves accountable, right, to our job search. It's really easy to sort of feel, I'll do it tomorrow, right, or I'll kind of put it off. I really think a job search is like a job in itself, right? You want to create some sort of document that has, these are the actions I'm doing, this is the result of those actions. And to really be able to evaluate, is what I'm doing right? And if it's not, then you have to sort of perhaps retool it. Where am I successful? Where am I not? I think being accountable to yourself is going to be one of the most important elements of a successful job search.
And do you think there's a piece of that people underestimate is going to take as much time or just needs more attention?
Yeah, I think it takes time. I mean, I think there's obviously maybe those lucky people who meet the right person and gets them, but you have to be really patient. There is going to be obviously somewhat of a hurdle, as we said before, about someone coming back with that gap, and you're going to have to sort of, I guess, integrate that into your strategy, acknowledge it, but know that it's not going to be in a month that you may get a job. It might be 6 months. And if you know that, I think it will keep you on track. If you have unrealistic expectations, it's much easier to sort of, throw your hat in and say, I'm done.
Okay, great. And so that is the key piece, the coaching and putting your story together. But let's talk about those companies. I think that is a huge benefit, that you are actually identifying companies who want to hire people returning to work. So can you talk about the type of company that maybe finds these returners appealing employees, and again, how we're going to address and sell the strengths of these people versus other types of employees to these companies?
So it's really interesting. When we launched our platform over a year ago, we knew the women existed, right? We knew there were millions of women out there, as we said before, who were looking to return to the workforce. What we didn't know was, are companies interested in hiring women? That was sort of the big puzzle piece that we didn't know the answer. And we were very excited that when we launched, the reception we got from corporate America was extraordinary. And like I said earlier, from all types of companies, not just large companies, but mid-sized and small companies as well. So that's the good news. And I think another piece of good news is there is a trend that I think started several years ago. Goldman Sachs was the first company to launch a return to work program, so a program that just focused on women who are taking career breaks. It's becoming more and more popular. And we're seeing companies that are not only just really large companies doing these return to work programs, but one of our corporate partners, Xers, has about 1,000 employees, and they're doing a return to work program. So it's becoming more and more common, which is great. And one of our jobs at Apres is to go to these companies and advocate for this demographic. I am a lawyer, that is my background, but I literally go in and advocate about why this demographic makes fantastic employees. Not only the sort of value the company gets from hiring the woman, but also the value the company gets from having this demographic infused back into the workforce. The value it has on the younger generation, on the millennial generation just coming in. It makes a huge difference, the millennial generation, to see women down the road that they want to emulate. So, hey, look at that woman. She had a career, she took a little bit of a break, and my company wants her back. That has tremendous value to not only retain those women, but also to attract women and attract great candidates. And I always say, the company that figures this out, or the sector that figures this out, how do we attract and retain the best women and keep them? And even if they take a career break, get them back, they are going to win the war for talent, and they're ultimately going to be the most innovative and successful companies. I believe that. And by the way, it's not just gender diversity, it's just diversity in general. So that's the good news. Here's the bad news, I think. And I don't want to say bad, but I would say the tougher news, which is, while key executives and human resources professionals may be interested in bringing the demographic back, a lot of times the hiring managers who are actually looking at the resumes have a harder time making the leap, right? So they have resumes in front of them. 1, millennial, no gap. 2, Gen Xer, gap. It's a hard choice to make. I'm going to take this Gen Xer with a gap. You know, that's a little bit of a leap of faith, especially when we don't have a huge number of success stories of women that have returned to work that we at least all know about, right? I think there's going to be more and more as the years progress. But so it's that leap. And part of our job, too, is talking to hiring managers and again, advocating for the group, advocating for why this makes sense, not only because it's a nice thing and a warm and fuzzy thing to do, but also because it's a good business decision to make. So that's our job. But that, I would say, is the most difficult hurdle. And just sort of following up with something Lynn said, in the roadmap back, one of the things I talked to women about, too, is you have to have the right mindset when you're going back to the workforce. You have to know you're going to get rejected. It is going to be hard. And I think if you have that mindset at the beginning and you accept it, it makes the process a lot easier. You know, as women, especially this demographic, we tend to lack confidence. And so when we don't get an email back from someone we reach out to, or we get that rejection letter, it's hard. Rejection is hard. But you will get rejected. So what? So you have to keep going and you have to keep trying. And it is a process and it does take time. But I think if you sort of adjust your attitude and your mental outlook on the process, and try and learn from rejection or try and learn from the networking that you do, it only works in your favor.
Okay. Well, that's great. I think building the resilience, that's a key skill we want to arm all of our students and alums with. But when that person is called in for the interview and they're in front of the hiring manager, what are the key things, this is a question for both of you, that you're suggesting people do to come out and address that gap on their resume?
I think Jen and I are kind of on the same page with this, which is you have to just own the gap and move on from it. So, you know, don't dwell on it. The person's going to see it in your resume, and you have to very quickly, you know, redirect the conversation to how you can add value. I think also oftentimes as women explain, I mean anyone, you explain things away, you spend too much time on it. I spent, you know, X number of years with my family, and now I'm looking to add value, contribute to this company in X ways. And you have to really be in control of redirecting that conversation. And how you handle it, I think, is how you'll be judged in a sense in the interview.
Absolutely. And I think another thing I would add to that is you have to be really prepared. This is a competition, and it's a fierce competition to get hired. And you have to come to that interview incredibly prepared. Yes, you own the gap. You don't shy away from the gap. By the way, the gap has tremendous value. And I know from my own personal experience, I'm a much better employee today than I was before I had kids, and frankly, before I left the workforce. I know I have great value to add because of that experience. So own it, know your narrative, practice it at home. I say that all the time. Look in the mirror, practice it when you're driving in your car, know your elevator pitch. Companies, I see this in every HR group that we talk to. Companies just want good, solid, reliable, loyal employees, period. They want someone who's going to come in and get the job done. They don't want drama. They want someone who's going to be efficient, and then that goes home. That's it. And, you know, so I think that, you know, if you are excited energized about returning to the workforce, you're excited about that company and what they're doing, it goes a long way instead of being nervous about your gap. They don't care. They'll get over the gap in about a minute, and we see this all the time. I would say a huge mistake that this demographic tends to make when they're returning to the workforce is they go into these interviews and talk about the things that they want. Oh, gee, I'd really like a flexible schedule. Oh, gee, I'd really like to be part-time. And, okay, we all would. You know, I'd like a flexible schedule too. But the problem is that, you know, there is a price to be paid for the career gap. And I think that knowing that and going in with the attitude of, I may have to hit it hard for the first year or two back, and then I'll have a little bit more say over my schedule. I think if you have that attitude going in, it's much better. So don't in these interviews talk about the things that you want and you need and your schedule and your obligations. You just want to go and sell yourself as a great value add to the company.
I will say that has happened to me a number of times when an alum calls me, and not just at Emory, but they're at other institutions as well, and they would like to return to the workforce but have so many different criteria that need to be met, and a lot of it is around scheduling, and that isn't what the employer wants to hear about. It's unfortunate, and is it fair? No, but not what you lead with.
Right.
So,
I think, Sarah, also what we experience too with our members is that they're intimidated possibly by going back to work full time. It sounds like a lot to bite off, you know, going from 0 to 60. But the fact of the matter is, so many women who do it end up loving it. And so I think you limit your options tremendously if you say, I only want a flexible job. But I'm here to tell you, there's just not that many flexible jobs out there. And what is out there doesn't tend to go to women who have taken career breaks and are looking to get back in. It's sad, but it's true. Those jobs go to established employees who have committed to the workforce and to that particular company, have established their loyalty, and the company's like, all right, I trust you. I'll give you some flexibility over the next couple of years. And that's what we see over and over again.
Absolutely. So also talking about a reliable employee who seems like they're not going to bring drama. Employers are looking at online presence before you come into that interview. So what are your tips for managing that online presence? What are the must-dos and the definitely don't-dos?
Well, first is to have an online presence, especially LinkedIn, right? And just to sort of back up a little bit is LinkedIn versus resume, which I get that question often. We do. A resume is something that really should be tailored to whatever position that you are applying to. Right? You can change it. Your LinkedIn is a little more consistent. It's sort of your brand. And what's important about LinkedIn is that you get to add content, right? So articles that you think are interesting. And obviously with the head of thinking of it, okay, how am I going to make myself look like, whether it be an expert or at least really deeply steeped in whatever industry I'm looking to get into. So you really want to market yourself on your LinkedIn site very appropriately and really deliberately, right? So if I want to get X job, what kind of articles I want to post, people I want to connect with, obviously. I think LinkedIn has enormous resources in terms of that networking piece I was talking about before, is you know, obviously reconnecting with people who knew you back when, I think is really important, and using it as a resource tool. It's also, if you are interested in a particular industry and you're not really sure, you know, do I have what it takes, or what do I need, where's that gap, what does that look like? LinkedIn's a great way to join certain groups or to reach out to someone, right, and ask them to, you know, help. People are very open, you know, to ask for that. It's really a way to build your network. But again, we say this to our kids, is to obviously be careful whatever you put on social media, because it will be used, whether in a good way or a bad way, when someone's evaluating you as a candidate for a position. So you can't underscore that enough, is to really think about pictures that you put up. You want obviously a very professional profile picture, and anything else that you put on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. You know, you now have that hat on. I'm looking for a job. What do people want to perceive me as? And you're in control of that. And so I think it's really important how you convey that to potential employers or just people you're looking to network with.
And I would just add to that, Sarah, you know, when I graduated law school, there was no such thing as a personal brand, right? That concept didn't exist. That's a relatively new thing. And I think it's intimidating for a lot of people, especially if you've been disconnected from the corporate world for some time. But all it simply is that sort of perception that you want out there in the corporate world. And we just did a panel recently with a woman who was out for 14 years and returned back into the financial sector. And she was saying that the best piece of advice she got was, you have to remember that the corporate world has not seen you in your stay-at-home persona. They've not seen you in your exercise clothes schlepping kids around. They only know you as the person you're putting forward to them on social media. And so creating that personal brand, and I can't emphasize enough what Lynn said, which is, you know, if you create that personal brand on LinkedIn, that's what people know you as. This is a person who's interested in marketing. Look at what she's doing. She's writing articles, and by the way, anybody can write an article. That's another thing that I feel like I've learned recently. Anybody can write an article. Write about something that interests you and post it, and share articles that are in that space, and look like you're really committed and energized in the sector that you want to get back to. It's extraordinarily important, and I just can't emphasize enough, perception is reality. And when people go onto LinkedIn and they see that business persona, that's what they know. They don't know the other stay-at-home part of you.
I would also add that LinkedIn and Twitter are also great resources to research industry trends. I happen to go on Twitter now, and it's a great resource to find out what's happening in different companies, and so that when you go into an interview, you're really knowledgeable about what's happening. Because I know a lot of people, when you're looking, feel very disconnected from the industry. What's happened since I've left? So don't think of it as only as a way to network, but also think of it, what can I gain from a knowledge source as well? And to really be on top of things that people are saying and doing as well.
Right, exactly. You don't have to tweet yourself, but it's a great way to do research.
Oh, absolutely.
And we do, with Emory, we have a LinkedIn group that has 23,000 members. So if you do write an article, share it with the group in Emory if you'd like. We're always looking for new people to post. If you go to a networking breakfast, it's a great way to follow up, to connect with someone on LinkedIn, and then you don't lose touch. And we do have a new tool that I will send out to the group afterwards that is a supplemental tool on top of LinkedIn that is exclusive to Emory alums. So that is something you should absolutely go on it and look for Emory alums who might be able to help you. So for those of us on the line today who are about to potentially go on a family leave or leave the workforce for whatever reason for a break, what are you recommending that they think about and make sure they do to manage this in the best way to make it easy for them to return later?
I think it's a great question, and one that we don't always ask ourselves before we leave. And I think what I would say is to always have one toe sort of in the water, right? Whether it be you completely stop working, don't give up your networks, right? Make sure that, you know, once every 3 months or 6 months you have coffee with your old boss, or you really are in touch with people. Make sure that you're doing those volunteer opportunities that are making sure that your skills are still honed, right? And if you're willing to do some part-time work, great. If you're willing to do even some pro bono work, there's a lot of organizations out there that connect you with organizations to do pro bono work. So my best advice, I think, is to make sure you don't completely take yourself out. And there's a continuum of that. You know, it could be everything, meeting with them and to talking to them, to doing, you know, more part-time work. Because I think, as Jen was saying, the hurdles they're formidable. And so when you will eventually want to get back. Although it seems you may not want to at the time, you will. And so you want to make that transition easier. And so to be a little thoughtful in terms of how you want to manage that before you completely leave.
Yes, I know my own experience was when I opted out of my career, I wasn't thinking past like the next week. You know, I was just at my wit's end. At that point, I had 2 little kids. My commute was an hour and a half each way, and I was just done. I just couldn't do it any longer. And I was like, I'm just opting out, and I absolutely made all the mistakes that I suggest people they don't make. I just dislocated from my business contacts. I didn't do really strategic volunteer work. And so for me, what I would suggest to people is exactly what Lynn said. Keep your networks going. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It can even be digitally. It can even be shooting someone a LinkedIn message. And Another piece of advice that I wish I had done that I always give to people is if you're opting out, whether you think you're coming back or not, do strategic things and keep a journal, because you will forget the things that you've done, and when the time comes to refresh your resume, you're not going to remember the different skills that you've used, the different volunteer work that you've done. And I would say when we're talking about volunteer work, what volunteer work do you put on a resume? And there's a lot of research out there that you shouldn't put PTA on your resume. I tend to agree with that. I don't think it helps. But I think if you do, any board work, any board work that has, where you've actually had a project or you've had actual results, raising money, etc., building something new, those are all transferable skills. And I can tell you, I've never been the president of my local PTA, but I know it's a ton of work, and it's not an easy job. But you put that on your resume, and you're almost guaranteed to get dinged. And that's what the research shows, and it's unfortunate, but it's true.
It's nice we have that research now. I'm sure that's okay, so now we are going to move into the Q&A portion. The questions that were sent in advance, as well as any questions that the audience has right now. So please take a moment and send in anything you'd like to ask us. So first question here, what happens when you are returning to work and you would like to position yourself for a new field and you need to present your transferable skills? How do you recommend doing that?
Well, I'm just going to say that this is a very common issue for women. We hear all the time, I want to go back to work, but I don't want to do what I was doing before. We hear that a lot. And so I think the good news is, one, if you're in that boat, you're not alone. And two, a lot of skills are transferable. Some are not and are difficult to transfer, but a lot of skills are transferable. I mean, I'll let Lynn talk about the details of this, but one thing that I would say is something that Lynn mentioned earlier, which is the world is new with online educational resources. And I believe, and I've seen from our own experience with companies, that when they see a woman who's recently taken a course and paid for it and gotten a certificate or a degree, it makes a huge difference because it really establishes that commitment. And so if you are transferring sort of careers and you're looking to do something different, if you get a little educational component to go along with that, it goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree. And also, part of this is also the networking piece comes in again, right? So if you're looking to go from A sector to B sector, go meet with people in that other sector and find out, what is it that I can take with me and what are skills that I need to cultivate. I think that's so important because you're getting insight into it. And I think you need to not, like Jen was saying, you don't have to forget about everything you've done because there's so many skills that are transferable, whether it be soft skills or more technical skills, but really meeting with people and really understanding what are those educational certificates you may want to get, or even higher, master degrees, in order to really make that transfer more successful.
All right, and let's say you are given an offer, which is great news. How do you recommend handling salary negotiations? And this is really, everyone's curious about this, but what are your tips?
Well, I'm certainly no expert in salary negotiations, but I will say this, and this is what we certainly tell our members: be educated about what the going rate is, know what the market is, know what your employer is paying and other employers within that sector are paying, and going in with sort of goods of knowledge is huge, but also recognize, and I think this is another mistake that women going back to work make, you're going to pay for the gap that you've taken. It's going to happen. You're going to take a pay cut, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to be hard. But I think I hear from employers a lot, they don't want to hear women complaining, I used to run a whole team, and I used to do this, and okay, but that was 10 years ago, okay? And 10 years have elapsed, and you're not at that level anymore, and you've got to be prepared to take a pay cut. Now, I'm not saying you should pay less, you should be paid less than what your counterpart at the company doing the same job. You shouldn't. There should be equal pay. But again, knowing that your level may be different than what you're going into. And so that's the advice that I would give. And interestingly, we have a podcast called The Apres Show. And one of my upcoming guests is someone, her name is her last name is Dickinson, and I think it's Angela Dickinson, and she has a company called Ask For It, and I think it's askforit.co, and her whole platform is about negotiating. And so there are organizations out there that if you like, oh, I'm going into a job interview and I'm a little uncomfortable about how to proceed, there are, you can talk to consultants just about this particular topic, and it might be worthwhile, whether it's a half an hour. And by the way, I think it's important to know that whether you're in Atlanta or anywhere around the country, another great thing is you can work with a consultant or a career coach like Lynn digitally, and that's how people do it all the time. Yeah. So even if someone may not be in your local area, it's just as easy to do a video conference with someone or a Google Hangout and have that conversation.
Absolutely. I believe most coaches, they tend to tell me that their appointments are now more likely virtual than in person, even if they're in the same city as their clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the companies that you're working with are also outside of New York City as well. That's just noted.
We're very much national. We are based in New York City, and obviously New York City is headquarters for a lot of companies, but we have jobs. First of all, we have members in all 50 states and some international members as well, and we have companies all over the country. And a lot of the companies that are on our platform are looking for people to work remotely, so you don't have to be where the company is located, and that is a growing trend as well, remote work. So yeah, we're definitely national, and one of our principals is actually based in San Francisco as well.
And so in the pursuit of networking, since that is such an important piece here, how do you recommend artfully reaching out to friends and past colleagues and not damaging any relationships? So how to go about those asks, not too aggressively, but also getting somewhere.
I think people, and Jenna said this oftentimes, people like to help people, right? I mean, taking someone to coffee at Starbucks and saying, if I take you out for coffee, I'm going back to work. I'd love to sort of pick your brain a little bit about, what I need to do, what I need to think about. I think oftentimes we think of networking as sort of icky a little bit because you're always asking for it and I'm not really giving back. Think about ways to make it a reciprocal relationship. So if you meet with someone and you're asking them for something, perhaps if you see an article or you see some way to help them, a couple of weeks later, do that, right? So that the relationship feels a little more even. And so if you are concerned about how the relationship might shift or asking too much, think about how can I help this person so that it's not just about them, helping you. And I think that sort of evens out the relationship a little bit and makes it feel that you're also doing something to help them in whatever way.
Yeah, and women are great networkers. We're great social networkers, but for some reason when it comes to business networking, we get a little bit uncomfortable, and it shouldn't be that way. I ask people for coffee all the time, and I try and make it not difficult for them. Can I get 20 minutes of your time? I'm going to buy you a cup of coffee. Let's meet at Starbucks close to your office, and I'll make it easy for you. I do that all the time, and I think it is probably the #1 thing that women who are looking to go back to work should do is network all the time. Network with people on the soccer sidelines, network with your friends, network with your friends' husbands, network with your old business colleagues. And if that person's retired, it doesn't matter. Network, network, network. But I will say, you have to be prepared. The worst thing you can do is go and meet someone for coffee, and they say, which they probably will, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? And you look back at them with big doe eyes, like, I have no idea, but thanks for asking. That is a huge mistake. You have to go into that networking coffee or lunch or whatever and have a thought of, here's what I'm looking to get out of this networking meeting. I'd like this person to connect me with these 3 companies, or I'd love, email introductions are a big thing. I'd love an email introduction to so-and-so at this company. People, like Lynn said, and this is how we built our company, was through our personal networks and people wanting to help us. That's it. I mean, we started the company with that, and don't underestimate people's willingness to help. It makes people feel good. Everybody wants to help women returning to the workforce. I see that all the time, and whether it's an email introduction, which will take somebody 2 seconds to do, or whether it's, hey, can I shadow you at work for the, for the morning? Because I'd love to just see what it's like in an advertising agency today. I've been out of the ad world for 10 years. What's it look like today? Can I just come in and sort of shadow you for a couple of hours? Like, people love that stuff, I find. And the worst they can say is no, and you move on.
And I would add is to take it seriously, right? I mean, one thing I think people do wrong is if it is a friend, let's say you're networking with, really take it, whether it be being on time, following up afterwards, being really clear in what you want to get out of it. Someone will really know right off the bat if you're serious about this or not, and that will in turn impact how they help you. So you're not, when Jen started the company, because I saw it, she was incredibly deliberate and thoughtful, and when she sat with people, they really understood what it was she was looking for. If you are not a professional, not wearing a professional hat with friends or colleagues, they will not help you. And so I think it's really important to think of that as well.
And I'll just reiterate one point, which is the elevator pitch, which I mentioned earlier. But again, when someone says, what are you looking to do? Not only what can I help you with, but what are you looking to do? Even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, have it come out in a way that's a very thoughtful, I know I'm interested in doing this field. I'm not sure exactly what, particular job or position, but I'm in my exploration phase now and I'm really curious about X, Y, and Z. Like, you can't go willy-nilly and say, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that women returning to the workforce are struggling against is commitment. Is this woman really committed to coming back to work? Because nobody wants to waste anyone's time, most of all theirs. So, if you come across as sort of willy-nilly, I think that can really harm you. So know your elevator pitch and know what you're asking for.
Well, that's great, because I was going to ask if you had any opening lines for these coffee meetings, because it can be kind of awkward when you're catching up with someone you haven't seen in a while, or maybe you knew them in a different situation and it's time to get down to brass tacks. So you recommend just launching into, well, thanks for your time. Here's why I want to meet with you today. I'm looking for X, Y, Z. But you still want to make it about them so that it's not just focused on you the whole time.
Yeah, and I would say, you don't launch right into, here's what I'm looking for. I think it's, here's my story. I've been out for 7 years. This is what I did before. I had a very accomplished career. And I took some time out of the workforce. I am 100% committed to going back. And this is what I think I want to do. Here's the steps I'm taking to do that. And whether it's an exploration meeting, whether it's you want them to connect you to somebody, it's a conversation. It's not just like, here, this is who I am and this is what I want you to do for me. But it's professional. And what's the word you use? Which is take it seriously. Yeah. It's not, don't show that willy-nilly lack of commitment, because you are on and they are taking note of it, and no one is going to make the email introduction or connect you if they think you're going to be a big flop and not follow through, and they want to make sure that you are committed and that you want to do it.
All right, that's great. And so how do you stay motivated if you are in the pursuit of the company that is the right fit for you? And at what point do you say, I'm going to settle, this position is good enough? And how long do you suggesting hold out? Again, when it's that first job right after you're returning.
I think you have to think it's not the job, it's a job in the beginning, and especially because it's wonderful. You have a job, you took some time off, you've overcome, I'm sure, challenges, hurdles, for yourself perhaps, just sort of, self-doubt at times coming back. I think that to think about what you want to get out of this job, to show commitment, to not stay for 6 months, to stay for, 2 years, to be able to have, again, on your resume, some substantive, skills and experience, some impact at a job, to be able to build your network out again, I think it's really important. With resumes, you don't want to have, too much jumping around, because it then, in some ways, the story starts telling itself, right? Which is why is this person not committed? So I think that, that first job, it doesn't have to be a forever. But to really, I would say, take 2 years, make sure, 2 years, at least, that you're in the same, position.
Again, right, it's establishing that commitment. Right. And I think that the number one thing I've heard from women returning to the workforce is you just have to get back in the game. You got to get back in the game. So don't hold out for that perfect job. I'm looking for that flexible job that's 2 miles from my house that I can go home. You know, you're going to really limit yourself. And so get back in the game. It may not be the perfect job. It may not be exactly what you're looking to do, but you build from there. And we see it again and again and again with women returning to the workforce.
And are you checking back in with them to hear that later, once they found any sort of job, it's much easier for them to find that next job in a few years' time?
Oh, absolutely. And I think not only easier just from a resume standpoint, it's a lot easier from a confidence standpoint. You know, I mean, again, I'm thinking about a woman who took a 14-year career break and who had no confidence. And this is a woman who was Ivy League educated and had a wonderful career, 14 years out. And she did a return to work program and stayed with the company then for 2 years after the return to work program, which was about a 3-month program. And it was like she was never out. You know, it was like the 14-year gap was almost erased. And it just builds so much confidence, and you know you can do it. And that's the biggest hurdle. You know you can do it. You know you're back in. And so when you go and you interview now, you're going into it with a lot more confidence. And you know, I think that ability, like I have value and I can add value to a company, goes a long way.
That's great. That's great to hear. So there is hope, even if you can't get your perfect job in the beginning. So we have a question here about positioning yourself as an international applicant in the era of high-stakes political risks like immigration issues and visas. Do you work with international candidates?
Yes, we actually do. We get a lot of those sort of, we get emails from people that are not, you know, they're immigrants. And in some cases it can be more difficult, and in other cases it can be a certain advantage. I mean, it's a global community today, and so to the extent that you can offer a company, hey, I speak 3 languages, that's a huge advantage. And certainly something that I don't have, so I wish I did. You know, but it isn't necessarily easy, and as I said, it is a very competitive landscape, and there is such a thing as unconscious bias and conscious bias, and frankly discrimination. So again, if you go in as a victim, you're not going to get hired. If you go in with, this is what I'm going to give to your company, and this is the value that I can add, and I'm so excited about what you guys are doing, you go a long way. But I can't tell you how many times we talk to women and they sound like victims. And there's actually a great article in the New York Times this past weekend, an interview with Barbara Corcoran, who, you know, is on Shark Tank. She built a real estate empire here in New York City. And one of the things she talked about was, as soon as she hears someone sounding like a victim, she knows they won't succeed. And from my own experience and what I see, I 100% agree. And I know hiring managers don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear your sob story. They don't want to hear you sounding like a victim. They want to hear what you can do for them. And I just want to say, as I'm talking about hiring managers, one point, we had an event the other week with, on the panel was a hiring manager and talking about the gap, and I thought she had really good advice, which is, you be sincere about the gap. Don't try and like, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. Like, you don't have to do that. Be sincere about your story. Be sincere about your narrative, and it goes a long way. People get it. They understand. You know, we're in this world where people know the obligations that exist outside the home. And I think being sincere about that gap is great advice. Yeah, I thought it was really good advice too. I mean, it was her advice. She liked it.
So since you just celebrated your first year anniversary, what are the biggest takeaways you've learned in this past year? Maybe what you realized was a misconception you had about this population, or how they need to prepare themselves for the interview, or how employers view them, anything like that you'd like to share?
Well, I would say my biggest takeaway is something that you said a few moments ago, which is there's hope. There's excellent hope for women who have had career breaks, and not only hope, but there's real traction. Companies want women back in their workforces, and it's now, you know, you see it's in the papers every day, you know, about gender diversity and the importance of gender diversity. Again, that's not saying it's easy, because when you're in that interview and you're sort of in the process, it's still difficult. But companies do want women, and so I think there is a recent surge of women supporting other women, which is exciting. But that companies really trying to diversify their workforces, especially at the mid to senior levels. And so for me, my biggest takeaway is whenever I meet anyone, it's like a complete possibility of them going back to work. It's all in their, it's all up to them, you know, and how they go about doing it. And perseverance, you know, you just have to persevere and keep going and keep trying.
So it's not easy. There is hope, but it requires a lot of effort. Okay. And for those on the line today, you went to an extremely reputable university that has a great brand and a great network. So I will say that to me, that means you have a leg up, and we do have alumni chapters in many of the major U.S. markets and abroad. We have a lot going on in Atlanta that you can take advantage of, and Emory alums absolutely want to help one another. So that's also positive. But Lynn and Jennifer, thank you for this wonderful conversation today. So insightful and useful for us. And I hope everyone will visit Apres' website. Again, I will send it out after this, along with information on our own career and leadership coaches that have an exclusive partnership with the Emory Alumni Association. You can receive one complimentary coaching session with each of our partners, and then they offer a discount for subsequent sessions. So that is something to look into. We also have some past webinars that might be of interest, specifically on the job search process and the LinkedIn and interviews. So we'll send that link out as well. We hope to see you all soon again, and best of luck to those of you who are in the middle of a search. And if you're about to go out on a break, think about volunteering and staying in touch. And best of luck to everyone. Thank you again for your time today, ladies, and we will see what happens with Apres in its second year. So much happened this first year, so I look forward to hearing about what's next.
Great. Thanks, Sarah, so much, and thank you to Emory for having us today.
Have a good day. Thanks.